this guy just resigned from the Federal Home Loan Bank, said, I can't be confident of anything anymore. He said that, essentially, in the mortgage-backed securities area, they're lying about everything. And I had a link that Mr. Black, who used to be deputy commissioner during the time that they did the savings and loan thing in the 80s, he said, they're lying about everything. So if you don't get the email version of Forecaster, this last one, we came out on Friday instead of Saturday last week, please get a copy and look at that link. I mean, he rips them a new one. It is unbelievable that such things can go on, and nobody says anything. Not even in government or in Wall Street, in the media. It's like a conspiracy of silence. Anyway, it's very, very frustrating because this market should be considerably lower, and gold should be selling at $3,000 an ounce. What do we get for questions, Melanie?
Here's one from Andy. Since he's been listening for a couple of years, he says, since the scenario of using gold and silver for protection depends entirely on Fed and Congress fiscal and monetary policy breakdown causing the collapse, what indicators are you using to spot a breakdown in the fiscal and monetary policy? He says he only asked this because the gyrations of the last year show that the Fed has plenty of hitting power left. They have controlled the markets better than he ever expected them to. Earnings are due, but what real indicators will show us that the Fed is losing control?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious the Fed is, and the Treasury have lost control, and they're trying to keep this whole thing together. That's reflected in the collapse of the dollar rally at 89.5. It's now around 84 or something like that, or 84.5, somewhere in there. So the triple top is in. The dollar's not going any higher; it's going lower, and it's a reflection of that. I mean, they've already had to allocate $12.8 trillion. That's with a T, like in Tom. Dollars. That's another indication of loss of control and breakdown. They can't do it indefinitely. They just started doing it in the last 20 months, or nearly the last 18. And there's going to come a time when you're going to have monetization of all that money being held by the banks. It is being used as collateral to keep their books straight, so to speak, and give them a make-believe income. Because the dividends that, the interest that the Fed pays on money that they lend to them and they lend back to the Fed is higher than what they're paying for it. So it's a phony source of income because the Fed just credits their account. There's no real money made. It's created as a cipher, an entry in a bookkeeping method. And so there's all kinds of signs. If Treasury and Fed had any kind of control whatsoever, they wouldn't be monetizing $300 billion, which has almost all been spent. And they'll be back for another $300 billion probably in a month or two. And it may be close to $1 trillion by the end of the year. And by the end of next year, it could be $4 to $5 trillion. I mean, there's no end to this. And you get to pay for it. And it'll all show up in inflation. And quite frankly, they want inflation because they want to make darn sure that deflation doesn't take over until they want it to. And how far down the line that is, I don't know, but it's at least a couple of years. And they're going to keep on jiggling around with this thing. And during that course, the stock market will go down. Now, it just went up precipitously on the Dow from 6,600 to approximately 8,000. And you always get the violent rallies during bear markets in particular. And that will go down and test again the 6,600 area, and I believe it will be broken. And so we're going to get a downside momentum in the market and in the economy. Now, some of the downside in the economy will be neutralized by the stimulus package and some of this money that is, in fact, going into circulation out of what the Treasury is creating and the Fed is creating. But it's only going to be a moderating influence. It's not going to allow the economy to recover. It might allow it to hold its own. But there won't be any recovery there. Unemployment's not going to get any better. We're already at 19.2 to 19.8%, whether you take my figures, which is a lower one, or John Williams' figures, which is a higher one. That's U6, the real U6, since 1980. Or I should rephrase that, real U6 that they used in 1980 before they turned the indicator, the index, into a Mickey Mouse mechanism. And so we'll see 22% this year, and it may be higher. And next year, after the fluff is gone, late in the year, we'll start headed to 30%. This is not going to get better. And you're going to see credit card debt drop, which we already saw in February. And you're going to see people starting to save. It went up from a year ago from a minus 1% to a plus 4.7%. That's going to happen as well. Normally that would be good, but not what these people are doing right now at the Fed and the Treasury. They don't want savings. They want everybody to spend everything to keep the machine going. And obviously that's not happening. And that means they're going to have to dump another $500 billion here and a $500 billion there. And so anyway, there are lots of signs that the Fed and the U.S. government are in serious trouble. Horrendous debt is being piled up. And they say they're going to take it out of the system before the system collapses or before we get high inflation. Inflation's 9 to 10% right now. No, in Europe it's not that. It's lower. The only places that had to come down from the same level as we are Spain, Ireland, and England. Now, Spain hasn't had any monetization yet. Ireland started about 3 months ago, but England's had a lot. British inflation is still running over 2%. In Ireland, I don't know what it is right now. And in Spain, it's probably running around 1 to 1.5%. And that's probably a true figure. So I expect that there'll be monetization coming along next month, and it's going to start to stoke up inflation again, along with the persistently higher prices, particularly in food. That's why we were screaming 2 years ago and saying everybody should get food, and the price is going to go up. And, of course, it did. And those who acted did buy food at a cheaper price. Anyway, any other questions?
Yeah, Bob, the question was about control, but couldn't you say also that in part they are still in control even though they're losing control? Because don't they want to ride this collapse? I mean, they want to ride it all the way down to the bottom, because doesn't that allow them to further the completion of their agenda? I mean, don't they need to have a collapse? So in one hand, you could say they're losing control, but on the other hand, they're sort of in control. I mean,
yes.
Someone
I think
is in
that's
control.
you got to split it up.
Yeah.
Financial and economic problems, partially under control. Government and the financial theater is still in total control.
Yeah.
They're doing anything they want. I mean, when I see stuff come out of Homeland Security that says that people are stocking up on guns and ammunition because they think that the president and Congress might pass legislation to try to confiscate them. And if they try to do that, people intend to shoot back. And they called in the report, it was a government report that was leaked. And they said that anybody who has a gun is a terrorist.